Hi, it's Anton from Resource Education. We're continuing our series of video explanations for narrative tenses with a few more examples. You know I did the Beatles, you know I did Titanic with Jack and Rose. You've asked for more examples. So, as it's the holiday season, I thought we'd do some very important, very memorable Christmas stories. So, you remember the whole idea. Grammar is not evil. We just need to focus on the communicational necessity. What is the point of this particular item of grammar in speech? And with narrative tenses, it's actually simpler than you might think. So remember, we always start with a baseline, a main story, and of course, students realize it's all in past simple. John came to his wife Holly's corporate Christmas party. Some gangsters took over the party. Yes, they did. John took out the gangsters one by one. Now, the head gangster Hans took Holly hostage, his wife, but in the end, John managed to kill Hans and save Holly. So, of course, we notice, some gangsters took over, took out the gangsters, the head gangster took Holly. We've got a lot of take here. John managed to kill and save. So we have V2 or didn't plus V1. It's the main story. It simply moves our story forward. So, as you remember, the first thing we do with this is focus on the main story. Because, is the story clear? Yes, it absolutely is clear. You've guessed it, this was Die Hard. A very important Christmas movie, I'm sure you'll agree. So, John came to his wife Holly's corporate Christmas party. Some gangsters took over the party. John started taking out the gangsters one by one. The head gangster Hans took Holly hostage. John managed to kill Hans and save Holly. Now, it is an interesting story. It's nice. We see what happens, but do we feel for the characters? Do we have a full picture of the story? Actually, it's worth noting, John came to his wife Holly's corporate Christmas party. Well, how come? How come, really? Well, you know what? They were having marital problems. Come on, let's face it. This context adds very important information to the story. It adds drama. It's much more dramatic when we know that John and Holly are having trouble. And this story helps them bring back together. So they were having marital problems. John took out the gangsters one by one. What was happening at that point? Well, you know what? The gangsters were trying to break in the company vaults. That's why it took so long. That's why the film is an hour and a half or 2 hours long. Because, hey, the gangsters didn't just come in, take the money, and leave. There was a vault. And they were trying to break in the company vault. Already here, we're giving context, we're painting a picture. The story becomes way more interesting. And that is what was, were, plus being is used for. To give context. To paint a picture. This is a great way for learners to discover the actual use of narrative tenses because they come in very handy. We can always tell a story exclusively in past simple. It is possible. It's fine. Communication is achieved. But the level of communication is not as precise as maybe we'd like to. Past continuous, was, were plus ing, gives context, paints a picture. It helps make our stories more interesting, and it helps the listener connect, feel for the characters. Well, let's add some past perfect in there, because we're not done. They were having matter problems, and they weren't small, actually. Holly had moved to LA for better career prospects. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. John is, if I remember correctly, John was a simple policeman from New York, if I'm not mistaken. His wife, Holly, had been offered a great opportunity in LA in a big company, Japanese, if I remember correctly. So Holly had moved to LA for better career prospects. Again, here we point out, had plus V3, had plus V3. What does had plus V3 do? It gives background. It explains the past. So past perfect is not simply an action that happened before another action in the past. If you think about it, why would you do that? Why would you change the chronological order of your story? Well, because this is my main story. This is the focus. This is just a background information that is important to understand the story, but it's just that, background information. So there you have it, with a simple Christmas story, Die Hard. We can make learners grasp the communicational necessity, and this really helps them develop not just their accuracy so that they can fill in the blanks and things like that, pass exams. It helps them actually develop their fluency because they understand the point in communication, why we use these tenses. John came to his wife Holly's corporate Christmas party. They were both having marital problems, honestly, and Holly had moved to LA for better career prospects. But John came, he really wanted to make amends. Now, unfortunately for him, some gangsters took over the party. They started shooting, they started threatening everyone. John, as a policeman, he took out the gangsters one by one while they were trying to break in the company vault. So that gave him that advantage. Now, the head gangster Hans at the end took Holly hostage. Okay? Ooh, more background information. Holly had tried to keep her identity secret so that he didn't know that John and her were married. But in the end, John saved the day. John managed to kill Hans and save Holly. There we have it, an interesting story. This was my Christmas example for narrative tenses. Shall we follow that up with Home Alone? Yes, we should.